Trevor Peek, and we have Charlie Campbell. So, what gets me so jazzed up about this fight on this card is let's start with Trevor Peek. All right, Trevor Peek, I was watching this guy, nonstop action. Nonstop action, high energy, definition of that dog in him. Just absolutely insane from like ding one to ding end. Dude just brings it. His fight with Eric Gonzalez was his official UFC debut. That's what instantly made me a fan. The guy was doing crazy Artem Lobov standing hammer fist, just everything he throws. Trevor Peek has reckless abandon and is trying to take your head off with it, but he doesn't headhunt. Another thing I noticed in his fights, he really mixes it up well. Great hip dexterity, great kicks, will instantly go low kick, body kick, high kick, like back to back to back, nonstop, just very smooth, fluid striking. Even though he does once again get a little bit reckless with how much he's trying to just take your head off and just put everything into his strikes, they are pretty smooth for the most part. And even with like takedowns, the guy just has high amplitude, like, you know, fuck, I fucked that up.
You're right.
High amplitude takedowns is what I'm getting at. Like comma worthy, pretty flawless transition from striking on the feet to just picking the guy up and slamming him from hell. It was just an insane fight. And comma worthy is a UFC alumni. Fortunately, he's not with the organization anymore, but when he came up to Worthy on the regional scene, he brought it to him from the beginning to the end and just steamrolled the guy. And that was just insane. The guy is just pure action, just nonstop. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Trevor Peek, very high on the guy. And yeah, he's got so many stoppage wins. I mean, stoppage wins in the UFC against Eric Gonzalez, as I mentioned. Did drop a unanimous decision to Chepe Mariscal, but then got right back in the win column October last year with the unanimous decision win against Muhammad Yahya. And then other than that, every other fight on the regional scene, like he got his Contender Series contract off a ground and pound finish, the KO TKO of Kama Worthy, like so many strike finishes. The guy has barely made it out of the round. Round two is like the latest he's went in a lot of his fights. Just absolutely insane. Charlie Campbell, here's some funny stuff with Charlie Campbell. Here's where we get a little bit wonky here. Watching his tape, there's not much to go off of from the UFC. He has a UFC win over Alex Reyes, Dominic Reyes's brother. Not sure if he's the older brother or not, but he's Dominic Reyes's brother. I'm not really put too much stock in that because Alex Reyes has been inactive for so long and has had such a very bizarre and short career that I can't really get too much info off of that. And then other than that, don't really honestly kind of know why he's in the UFC. I'm kind of curious as to the origin because he lost his Contender Series fight 2 years ago, and he was on a guy's highlight reel. He was on Chris Duncan's highlight reel for a pretty brutal failed takedown attempt that just he got absolutely his head bashed in by Chris Duncan off of. So that's pretty concerning because Chris Duncan hasn't exactly been too crazy since he's been in the UFC. He just dropped his last fight. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of the issue with Charlie Campbell. My main thing that I was noticing with his regional fights, because that's the majority of what I have to go off of, since once again he only has that Alex Reyes UFC fight, is a lot of grappling. Like his opponents were hell-bent on taking him down for some odd reason. And he was kind of content to just stand, but he would also initiate grappling himself to where it would lead to these weird situations. Like case in point, Abdul Rashid, his fight against Abdul Rashid. Last week was a ridiculous card for the UFC with a lot of bizarre shit. This fight was the most bizarre one I've ever seen before in my entire life. Charlie Campbell, Abdul Rashid, seriously, watch it. Watch it on YouTube. It's out there. Combat at the Capitol. Fucking bizarre fight. It was just Abdul Rashid butt scooting around the octagon, chasing Charlie Campbell, but then Charlie Campbell would also kind of honey dick and try to engage instead of letting Abdul Rashid get up. And it was just very bizarre how there'd be times when Charlie Campbell wouldn't want any part of the grappling, but then would initiate the grappling, but then would honey dick. It was just so weird, and it ended. And I still, after rewatching it 4 times, have no idea what the hell happened. It looked like Charlie Campbell had like the clinch on Abdul Rashid and was like trying to put Abdul Rashid's head into the cage and kind of do that cheese grater to it. And I think Abdul Rashid said he quit or like stop or something. And the referee just called the fight. And then it was just so fucking weird. And it's ruled as a KO TKO for him, but he wasn't throwing punches. Campbell wasn't throwing punches or anything. He was just holding Rashid up against the fence, and then I guess Rashid quit. And so the fight was over. Insane. Just very bizarre shit. So all that to say, I mean, there's good things that Charlie Campbell does. The main things I noticed as like his strengths, whereas Peek, I feel like clearly has the striking advantage and the power advantage. Campbell has some really nice hip tosses into scarf holds. That's like something I saw like in 2 of his fights. He really favors a hip toss into a scarf hold. And he had some good success against one of these Kazakhstan dudes. I think it was either Kazanov or Edward Chechian or whatever. One of those guys, he had really good success with that to the point where it looked like the Kazakh guy had the grappling edge, but then Campbell instantly was able to turn it against him and get a good win against those guys when it looked like he was getting his ass kicked in the grappling. He kind of seems like a grappling glass cannon in some ways to me, where if he's not taking you down or engaging in like the clinch, he's very susceptible to being taken down and being put in the clinch. And yeah, early opponents, for whatever reason, were hell-bent on grappling him. I guess they thought he was primarily a striker. But here's how I see this fight going. Once again, Trevor Peek, I feel, has the power advantage. He has the strike advantage. He has fluid strikes. He does body shots, kicks, punches, you name it. I think that this is going to be a fight that might end very similar, unfortunately, for Charlie Campbell to how his Dana White's Contender Series fight ended. He's going to be trying to get the takedown on Peek, and Peek is just going to take his head off, and he's going to get the KO TKO finish. I'm just really worried that Campbell has no urgency on his takedowns and does not put himself in secure positions. He throws caution to the wind with his head placement and shit like that, which is how he got finished on the Contender Series. And he's very prone to getting blasted in the first round like he did against Chris Duncan. And once again, Trevor Peek barely makes it to the second round. He usually ends fights in the first for the majority of his career. I think Peek comes out hot, swinging for the fences, overwhelms Campbell. Campbell shoots a takedown, tries to buy himself some time, puts himself in a compromising position. Peek hammers away at him, gets the finish. And odds right now, Peek at plus 150, Campbell at minus 180, and that KO TKO for Peek at plus 215. I'm seeing some cash registers like breaking open on this one. What do you think, Ben?
Peek Campbell's my Nuck If You Buck fight of the night. You know, when I was doing my research for Duncan, I think I ended up picking him also. I saw that Charlie Campbell knockout. I thought, holy shit, this guy's like really good. And then he went out and got subbed by Manuel Torres in 1:46 and just got completely dominated. Now I realize that was not Chris Duncan being that good. That was Charlie Campbell being that bad. He's got no chin, which is part of what you were saying with the head placement. I don't think his grappling's that great, and I think he gets frozen on defense. He will start trying to predict and stop trying to attack, and then at some point he just he freezes, and you're able to get an extra shot on him, which for a guy like Trevor Peek, I think he's going to have the intensity to bring it. If he can get knocked out by Duncan in the first round, he can absolutely get knocked out by Peek. This one is very, very reminiscent to me of last week's. We just talked about him in the opener. Nate Landwehr.
There we go, yeah.
It reminds me so much of that one. These odds are almost exactly the same, too. They were like 180 to 150. Trevor Peek, okay, maybe he does punch like a 90s pimp, but I like Peek. I like Peek in this one also. You're looking at the money split. It makes me a little nervous. It's about a 55-45 split. So the people are seeing this one pretty evenly. which once again kind of leads more credence to why is this such a huge gap in this fight. 81% of the money, however, though, is on Campbell, 19 for Peek. So you're seeing a lot of sharp money come in on Campbell, but Vegas, they always win. And what would the best case scenario be? Best case scenario for Vegas would probably be taking that 81% of the money and paying out that 19% at a plus 150, which minus 180, you're that's a horrible return, but plus 150, that's really not great. That's really not great, and that's because they're hedging, because they know that Peek can take this. So I'm with you. I'm on Peek on the money line.
Yeah, I'm trying not to gush too much over Peek. I'm trying not to let that bias come into play, and I'm also trying not to get too much of an erection at these odds and how people are kind of asleep at the wheel yet again.
Yeah.
But gosh damn, man, I can't lie. Watching those Trevor Peek videos and those highlights and his fights on the regional scene, man, made me want to like stand up and punch the shit out of my TV. It was just insane, man. Just so much energy, just high energy, just exciting guy. And once again, last thing I'll say about before I beat a dead horse, I don't get how Campbell is such a heavy favorite with one actual UFC fight against Dominic Reyes' brother, who's just been so inactive, has like lost 3 fights in a row now, I think, and is basically just a word away from saying, hey, I'm done. I'm retired. You know, all he has to do is say the word. Nobody bat an eye. And a lot of people would forget, honestly, sadly, that he's ever even been in the UFC. And I just don't get what they're seeing that I'm not. But, hey, I'm taking advantage.
Trevor Peek also has the jawline to compete with Drew Dober.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listen in and cash out. That's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spot from the bottom to the top, hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome, welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.